topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Triversity Talk. It's Wendy on Wednesday, and I'm so happy to be with you. I am in a much better state of mind than I was last week because our beautiful rainbow flag in the Triangle Park by Stonewall has, of course, been reinstated. And I just want to thank all the politicians in New York who were there, all of my amazing friends who were there. And yeah, it takes a village, it takes a community, but you know what? People made it happen, and that is what it's all about. So I hope everybody is having a good week. It's very apropos that, I'm starting out my talk speaking about what happened with the flag, because tonight we have somebody that is actually running for Congress, and I'm very excited to have them on the show. She is a nationally recognized victim and civil rights lawyer, and she's running for Congress in the 12th district in New York City. That would be the Hell's Kitchen area. For those of you in New York, that's of course the area we're talking about. We all love, filled with theatrical people, and I can't think of a better community for her to be running for. She's also, of course, a part of our LGBTQ community. So let's give a warm round of applause for Laura Dunn.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, thank you so much for being here tonight. So, Laura, you're getting all geared up to run.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm literally wearing Wild Fang right now, a lesbian-owned company. So I'm in the right gear for this conversation. I'm ready to talk about campaigning and what that looks like in NY12.
Yeah, and I'm very excited about that. For those of you who are just tuning in, Laura is campaigning, of course, for a seat in Congress. And again, in New York District 12, which is a district I'm in a lot. It's one of my favorite districts in New York, and I know you will serve it well. So, Laura, this is a lot that's going on right now. There's a lot of people running for congressional seats. It's what, 11 or 12 seats? 11 or 12?
There are 12 people running in my race for NY12, so pretty easy to remember. And just for context, you mentioned Hell's Kitchen. Hell's Kitchen is but one of several neighborhoods in NY12. So it's actually south of Harlem and north of Wall Street. It's a giant box that is Manhattan.
Now, I didn't know that the box was that big, because everything that I was reading, they mentioned the theater district and all of that. But my God, you will serve us well. So is this normally this many people run?
No, this is highly unusual. So Representative Jerry Nadler, who served 34 years now, has held this seat, and he is retiring. He is aware that it's time to transition leadership. And so a ton of people who have been waiting in the wings are stepping forward. I myself wasn't necessarily planning on running for politics, but as I'm sure every viewer here realizes, we're in a crisis mode. And as a civil rights attorney who is always running towards the fire to see how I can help, I've decided to step up.
Well, you're a civil rights and a victims attorney. I really want to emphasize that. You have quite a history. And can you tell us a little bit about how all this came about for you?
Absolutely. So I've been very public about being a survivor of campus-based gender violence, and it has been an issue I've championed for almost 2 decades now. So I started I started as a survivor. I spoke out with my story, and then I became a student activist. And upon graduation, I took a little break. I did Teach for America in post-Katrina New Orleans, helping reopen those public schools after 3 years of being closed. And during that time, I started working for a national nonprofit focused on this issue, went on to law school, worked on civil rights and victims' rights at law school, and did a bunch of clinics around it. And then I founded my own national nonprofit. So I've been going strong on this topic for a long time now.
Well, first of all, thank you for your staying power. Considering, your motivation was actually something that happened to you. It's not an easy thing to step out of oneself, right? To move the agenda forward. How did this happen that you got so focused on this where you knew you could make a difference?
Sure. So, when it happened to me, like so many survivors, I felt a lot of shame. I came from a very evangelical Christian upbringing and really was told it was my fault, that something about me as a sexual being, especially as a woman, would have attracted this type of violence. And
that you brought it on yourself. We've all heard that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I just want to publicly reject that for anyone out there who's heard such a horrific message. As a pastor's daughter, that was like a pastor father saying it to me. So we want to talk about spiritual trauma in addition to sexual trauma. I mean, that was a lot to overcome.
Yeah, it was interesting when I was reading your history, and I've been paralleling it with the 2 Netflix shows on Ghislaine and, of course, Jeffrey Epstein, and then, of course, everything that's been in the news. I find myself, I thank you for doing what you've been doing in your career, but with what's going on now, I don't understand why this is being dragged out. As far as I'm concerned, the expression, it's over and the fat lady sang, I'm sure you've heard that expression. Why is this not moving quicker? The victims have spoken. Let's move. We have lists of men. Why is, in your mind, why is it being dragged through the mud?
So I think it's pretty clear that the list of not just men, but complicit women is very shocking, right? Because it's world leaders. It is people who have been in positions of significant power, authority, and privilege for decades, and they've been supporting each other, helping each other. And there's even some foreign money going into this, which raises serious questions about who's really behind a lot of the harmful policies coming through America right now. It's certainly not Donald Trump. He's not smart enough. So I think the Epstein files are about so much. It's about covering up for abuse of men. It's about power and corruption at the government level. And it's about what is happening in America to undermine our democracy.
Yeah. But, I would have thought for me, once the Me Too movement started happening and it was so strong, I thought, okay, we're not going to be dealing with this kind of stuff anymore. And now I feel from everything I'm reading that we're back. We've turned history back again because nothing's happening. And when I see it in the news every day, I say to myself, is this ever going to change? For you and for, your beliefs, how do you feel about it?
I am going to make a strong statement right now. Stop voting for white men if you want something to change. I mean, really, you look at the government. The people in the files are running the government right now. And we keep kowtowing to power and privilege. Even in my own race, it's almost all white men, very few women, very few individuals from the LGBTQ community. It is the epiphany of privilege. And it costs millions to run campaigns. And I'm lucky enough to be people funded right now, but it's intimidating. Most average people can't run, people who are passionate, even just attorneys who are kind of middle class in New York City. We have a hard time reaching that status. So when you see people like us step up and say, I'm a queer survivor and I'm not going to take this anymore, you got to put your dollars behind us, because the powerful, the wealthy, they're putting dollars behind each other. And then we're getting the same results and we're surprised. The problems will continue until we have new leadership.
Oh, yeah. No, I absolutely agree with you. Now, to my knowledge, you are the only female Democrat running.
At this point, there's actually now 3, which is wonderful.
Where did that pop up from?
Yeah, they popped up later. So I was definitely the first woman to enter. At that time, 4 men were in the race with me. And then it just kept going until we hit number 12. So we have 2 other women. One is a journalist, one is a global health kind of background in policy. Okay. Both of them are over 60, and no shade to anyone reaching those years. But
that's okay. I'm over 60. I take no shade.
Yeah. We just want younger leaders that can put in the hard work, because really we're seeing people fall asleep in Congress. They're not only trading hundreds of millions of dollars worth of stock, but they're falling asleep when it comes to all the policies that you and I need in place to live and afford New York. So I really believe the next person that's going to win is probably going to be between the ages of 30 and 50. Yep. And I think they're expected to serve a long time. Now, very quickly, you already knew my policy platforms because we've chatted a few times, but for the audience members, congressional term limits is my number one. I don't think anyone should be in the House more than 12 years. They can go on and be in the Senate another 12 years, but after 24, move on. This is about the next generation of leadership. And a lot of the problems we have in democracy right now are because an older generation did not bring up a younger generation, and now we're hitting a cliff. People are retiring in droves or being challenged because the next generation is exhausted, tired, and can't see another scandal in the papers.
Right. There's a lot of dead wood that's sitting there now, too. I completely agree with you about the next generation having to come along and carry the mantle. I think that is important. We saw in the mayor election, we needed fresh blood, and people were like, who is he? Where did Mamdani come from? He seemed to come out of left field. And you know what? It was really a clean sweep. You have to admit, it was everything about him, whether you agreed with some of the things he said or disagreed. It will show you what fresh energy and fresh blood can do. And I'm wholeheartedly on board with you. I think we definitely need that. How do we get the fact that the terms are so long, that people can sit there for so long? How do you get that changed?
So there's a few ways. So one is just actually amending our laws and policies to reflect time limits. And that would kind of be the step one that I'm looking at. But honestly, I think the more we reform and remove money from politics, Mamdani had a fighting chance because he was matched dollar for dollar. And that's a huge boost for younger candidates who are a little intimidated by the price tag. My race, for example, at the lowest end is a $2 million race. At the highest end, we're talking 6, 8, 10 million, right? Amazing. So that's a terrifying number for the average Joe, but the way we can reform that is by having matching funds at the federal level, by doing ranked choice so that it's more about consensus than anything else. And that kind of removes privilege from the process, which is the big problem. Privilege is a big part of it. There are people in my race who were Republican and then saw an open seat and became Democrat. And we have a Kennedy grandchild who hasn't really worked on the Hill and done anything with law or policy. Yeah. So, people step up because they're like, I have the money and I have the name, so it's me. And I'm stepping up to give a whole different narrative of, let's have it be the people who are public servants day in and day out fighting for our community. And we need people power to do that.
We absolutely need people power. I was not aware, and I'm sure most of the people that are listening to this were not aware of what it costs to run. And you're saying on the low side, $2 million. That's a lot of money. So take us to the very beginning of how you started raising money for your campaign. How does one go about doing that?
Yeah, so I'm blessed in the fact that my previous advocacy gave me national recognition. So my story as a survivor was picked up by National Public Radio, who should be funded. All of you listening out there, I'm an annual. Yeah, I'm a regular giver, so let's keep NPR going. But they exposed my story, and I was asked by the Obama administration to come in with the Department of Education and speak about this issue. And so I started getting involved in federal law and policy pretty immediately. And when I kind of realized that I was building a national reputation, I went into law, built a national nonprofit, became the attorney, not just changing the laws, but enforcing them in court. And
Sure.
all of those contacts through my nonprofit, I saved them, cultivated them. When I made a national for-profit law firm, same thing. So I've been working on this for a while. I'm even a TED Talk fellow. I have a TED Talk with 1.25 million views about passage of the Equal Rights Amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
It's a great TED Talk. I listened to it, but it was during the Me Too time, and I played your TED Talk a couple of times, and I was just comparing it to, like, you know, where we're at now. So you basically have been very focused from the beginning, and as we say, had your eye on the prize. Did you see yourself running for a political position like shortly after you got out of law school?
Politics was like the farthest thing from my mind. I was just on fire for my issue. But the reality is, a lot of the time when you see something wrong and you actually go to research, like, why is this happening? It's because no law exists to protect a community, to hold perpetrators accountable. And so victims' rights, the area of law that I practice most often in addition to civil rights, is really about creating the legal mechanism and then enforcing it. So it's, you know, there's a lot going on in this country, and we just need to have the courage to make the laws that fix it, because it really does go downstream.
Yeah, well, there is a lot going on in this country. And I'd like to talk about the female demographic in this country, right? The current administration, he had a lot of women votes on the last election, and a lot of them were women over 50. And I read that, and I read it from a few sources. And then the most recent thing is Melania's film, right? The females that did go to see it were also, from anything I read, were women over 50, Republican women over 50. What is the matter with people? Why? You know, we had like E. Jean Carroll get out there and say she was raped. We had so many people get up and speak, and yet women, okay, in my age demographic, think that, do they think this is perfectly okay? Maybe you can help me analyze why they would do that.
Well, I was originally born in Madison, Wisconsin. I've already mentioned evangelical pastor's daughter. So it was a very conservative Christian upbringing, but in the liberal city of Madison and the purple state of Wisconsin. So political differences have been around me my whole life. And the reason I mention that is when you're in Dem cities like New York, you're kind of like, what is happening in the world? But I have enough contact with the outside world that I've understood that a lot of women said, well, I don't love everything, but one, I think it's talked or entertainment or hot air. So I'm going to take a risk because I think he'll shake things up in Washington, which he did, but not for the benefit of the people, which is what he promised. But he's a swindler, right? He wanted to say what you needed to hear.
It was so, you know, I know I'm a New Yorker, but come on, the handwriting was on the wall, especially for working class and middle class people. Okay. You know what? I can understand the wealthy. I can always understand the wealthy, because if you are selfish about hanging on to your own wealth, you're going to cast a vote in that direction. But it still mystifies me that for women, there was no red flag that went up. I don't understand psychologically what's gone on in this country.
What I truly believe is in my core is that a lot of people voted for him because they remind them of a father figure or another influential male authority that they grew up kowtowing and believing, no matter how violent, abusive, or horrific they were. I see a lot of that transfer. And, you know, I say that as someone where I have a sibling who very much voted for Trump, who loves me very much, has donated to my campaign, and yet twice has voted for Trump, even when I worked in Hillary Clinton's campaign and would have gotten an appointment had she won. So I've been there with you being like, what is wrong with people? But really, he is a showman, and people have said out openly, even now to this day, after we've seen who he really is, they still say, well, he's joking. He's not joking.
No, I know. I've heard that. Right. Mm-hmm. It's no joke. It's no joke. Although I will say one thing I will say, I spent time in Venezuela, and I knew a lot about the dictatorship there. And he got that guy out in 36 hours. I would like to see them go through the Epstein files that quickly. Do you understand what I'm saying? He's ruthless, absolutely ruthless, and really doesn't care about the law at all, and his subpoena, doing a subpoena here, subpoena there, doing really whatever he wants to do. So you, as a female and part of the LGBTQ community, how do you think you can help some of the issues that we've had happen in our community, such as transgender rights?
Yeah, so good news. I'm a Title IX attorney. That's the area of civil rights law I've practiced the most, and that's the law that comes up all the time when we're talking about transgender access, sports, anything around education. So I believe in equal opportunity. This level of discrimination is mind-blowing. We know it's really a distraction from the real issues of economic inequality and distrust in the government, but the trans community should not be bearing this. And as a queer woman, I stand with everyone in that community. And I want to make sure HIV/AIDS treatment, care, support is more common. New York City has very high rates, but only in certain neighborhoods. It's very much tied to resources and education. So we need to restore federal funding to make sure we have care, we have research, we're always advancing and making it safer for people to express themselves. I'm a big believer that we need to make sure that in everything we do, we are supporting each other's freedom of expression. And that's what I love the most about New York City. Everyone can live the exact lifestyle they want. I came out as queer in this community. It has very much embraced me, even though my family has not. So it's given me so much. I want to give so much back to the community here.
Of course. Of course. Yeah. I always say in New York, I feel like we're in a bubble, but we're also, it's not just a bubble. We are very powerful here. You're talking about addressing HIV and AIDS, which is something I was involved in from the very beginning. And we do have programs here. People are able to get what they need here. The reason I love that you're running for this seat is you can really move and shake in New York, Laura. You can make stuff happen. But at the end of the day, is it enough, right? If the rest of the country is just going so crazy, if someone in a rural area in the Midwest can't get their hormones, all right, if they can't get their HIV drugs, like what would be the bigger picture in your mind?
Yeah, so something I talk about a lot when I am on the campaign trail is how I've worked both Republican and Democrats alike to get bills passed. And again, referencing my upbringing, I can quote the Bible with the best of them. So when we see how broken the system is, and like you said, all the consequences of that, the lack of affirming care, the lack of rights, violence openly, there are so many things that can be fixed with starting with values, shared values. And we know from the Equal Marriage Campaign that people knocking on doors and saying, I'm someone from the LGBTQ community. I want to be able to love and marry exactly who I want. Like, this is why it matters to me. That changed the issue. It was person to person, values and stories. And that is the skill that I have. I've done that on the Hill, sharing my story as a survivor, bringing in other survivors with me. Those stories moved laws that Republicans did not want to pass initially.
Wow. So, you know what? I read through everything that you've done. I'm like, but what's the hook, right? You just gave me what the hook is. If you can, and that is a gift to have, Laura. If you can speak to Democrats and Republicans, that's your power. The fact that you're a pastor's daughter and you come from that background, but you are queer, you're part of the LGBTQ community. To me, that is a win-win, because I looked at everybody else who's running. I think we have two other LGBTQ candidates on there. Correct me if I'm wrong. Both, right. Both men, and they can't hold a candle to you.
And actually, there's three. One is not public, so I don't want to out that person, but one woman and one man on the campaign trail are out and proud along with me as part of the queer community. Right. So you're right. It makes a difference to have representation, because who we want in NY12 is someone who can lead on day one. So I already have the federal law policy experience. I've literally worked on the Senate Judiciary and worked on, pathways to citizenship, ending sex trafficking. addressing military sexual assault. I mean, there's so many issues I've already had my hands on at the DC level. So sending someone in from our community who can speak both languages to both sides of the aisle, I think over time, America will become independent. If I could run as one right now, I would, but I am beyond true blue, right? I've worked on the Hillary campaign, the Joe Biden campaign.
Worked on the Biden
campaign. I've done it.
No, you actually are true blue. So could you take us through, because people always ask this, we talk about bills being passed, and I was turned on. I've had a number of journalists on this show. I'm in the entertainment industry. I only know what I read. I do not know the process, right? And I think a lot of our listeners don't know the process. How do you go about getting things passed?
Oh, it's a great question. Well, first it starts with a wonderful idea, right? Like what needs to be done. And the best way that
for example, because I know you have a lot of thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's see. For this community, I'm going to go ahead and pick passing the constitutional amendment for privacy. So that's a big one. Most Congress members are not passing constitutional amendments, but the process always starts with drafting the actual language. So we need a right of privacy in this country that protects not just our data, because our privacy is being lost, but privacy rights were what gave us marriage equality, legally speaking, and what gave us reproductive access. So we need a right because the current Supreme Court has struck down that precedent. They have said it's no longer implied in the Constitution, so we need to expressly put it in there. So we draft that, and for that specific bill, rather than passing it through Congress, that's passed by the states. So Congress can go ahead and draft it, propose it, put it forward, and be advocating in their individual states for the state itself to pass, and we need 3/4 to ratify it. But having a constitutional right to privacy protects so many rights, both in our community and in privacy generally, which is being lost left and right. And we're seeing the consequences with ICE raids. When we don't have privacy, people are literally being tracked.
No, exactly. But all right, you brought up the ICE situation, and I have to hand it to the people I know that are in I'll call them the grassroots resistance groups, without naming them. They've done a really good job of controlling ICE in New York City. I thought when they took the flag away and then we put the flag back, I really did expect he did that to provoke, right? And the next thing we would have ICE and the National Guard. I thought he was going to use this to turn it into another Minnesota. That hasn't happened yet. But it feels like every day there's a different thing you wake up to. And I can tell you, most of the people I know in the LGBTQ community, a lot of them just feel they're exhausted. They are beat down, and just people in general, they're losing their mojo and they're losing their fight all around this. How do you think people can find that again? Right now we're in February, okay, and midterm elections are going to be coming up. How do you get people jazzed and psyched up? Like, what would you do? You're campaigning.
Absolutely. Well, first, I just want to identify that not only am I a queer woman, but I have Latina heritage in my background. And so these issues feel like I am under attack. And that's the energy I'm bringing into this campaign. It's not you and your community. It's our community. It's all of us. And it touches me personally. So everyone needs hope. And I think we're so demoralized right now around Epstein files, the rate of change, the mass firings, not just at the federal level, but in private industry. Like, we're just getting nailed day after day after day. So what I have always found, because I have done many hard things in my life, is that when you have a true vision of what the world will be when you are done with your mission, you just look at that and you keep that in your sights. So I literally visualize every single day the world I believe will exist the minute leaders like me take charge, the time that our community not just puts up that flag, but defends it. Because to your point, it was not lost on me that this was Stonewall, right? The place of revolution. So when we were raising that flag, I had the same concern of tension in the crowd, but it's like, I know who's going to win that fight. and it's not any of the law enforcement agencies. It's going to be the people. So
Absolutely.
I have a vision of a world where leaders serve the people, where people's voices are heard, and the powerful and privileged no longer have the leg up. And that is what I think about every day when I go on the trail. And that's the vision I speak about, which is why I focus so much on accountability in addition to affordability.
Right. Now, I wanted to bring that up. I want you to go through your different platforms. Let's talk about accountability.
Absolutely. So we all want accountability for the government right now. If we could take
right now, there's nothing accountable. They're doing whatever the heck they want.
Yeah, we are past the point that we should have impeached Donald Trump. We hit it in his first term, and Jerry Nadler was the hero championing those efforts. And Dems fell short because the establishment is out of touch. But this is shifting. This is shifting really rapidly. So I definitely want accountability, not just for the Trump administration, because it's him, it's Miller, it's Noem, it's Patel. I mean, we could go on and on. That list is quite long. So once you clear that, congressional term limits, ethical standards for the U.S. Supreme Court, and ending this insider trading that's making government officials rich based off information that they have a leg up on because they're the ones passing laws and working in private rooms to get this
That's
information.
Something I wanted to ask you about. Martha Stewart went to jail. She must have been like, fingered as the patsy. She's going to be the sacrificial lamb for this. This insider trading is going on. That used to be a big thing. Now it just seems like it's totally allowed. How do you turn that around?
Well, it's illegal in the private sector. It's actually legal in the public sector. So Nancy Pelosi, our fearless leader, has been making hundreds of millions, and she had the authority the entire time to close this loophole. But AOC is the one who's actually taking the steps to close that loophole, starting in the House. So there is a movement to stop this insanity.
Okay.
Because it's an oligarchy, right? Like it's the rich, the wealthy, the powerful, the connected, and everyone else loses out. So we can't have a government based on that. So if you go into public service, actually be a public servant. Money is not a motivator for me. I know it's a big motivator in New York, but I just need enough to live, right? The rest is really, a blessing if it comes to you. And that's the Midwestern in me. I'm totally comfortable closing the door behind me and saying, I'm not going to profit on that position. No one else behind me should either.
Right. That's a really great place to be. And here, I totally agree with you. Okay. Affordability, right? Mamdani talks about rent freezes. Most of my friends are the people living in the rent stabilized apartments, okay, because they're of a certain age and their lives have become very challenging. I'm very, very sensitive to that. Seniors, their lives are really, really difficult in New York. And a lot of my younger friends completely do not even recognize it because we very much have a world where if it's not happening to me, then it's not happening at all. What do you think, or how do you think you can affect those aspects?
Absolutely. So affordability, part of what you were mentioning is seniors really suffering. Social Security and Medicaid, Medicare, they're not indexed to inflation. So as we have rapidly rising inflation rates, we are not in any way calibrating at the federal government level. We've also never raised the federal poverty level. And I was going into a meeting with AARP, and it's very hard to shock me at this point. I study law. I know the failures in policy. I was utterly shocked that people getting Social Security over $25,000 annually had to pay taxes on top of it. So my affordability platform is let's index things to inflation so that these are not political footballs. We've solved the problem, move forward. And you mentioned affordable housing. I'll circle back to that, but I really want to stop taxing the working class and the retired who are barely making ends meet.
Right.
We know that the wealthy are playing games and skipping out, and it's because our tax code allows it. So when I hear my opponents say, oh, we'll make a tax credit and we'll do this, it's like, stop it with the tax code.
Right.
It's Swiss cheese and it only serves the powerful and the wealthy. It's not you or me. I'm exhausted doing my taxes right now, trying to understand how I can save every single penny because I look for money back like most Americans.
Right. No, I'm I'm in the exact same position. Again, here, I'm on your platform, I think is really, really great. I think these things are very challenging. While we're talking, I'm wondering, like, if you do get this seat, would you be able to work with Mamdani?
Yeah, I mean the federal and city levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're obviously separate levels of government, but there's always an interrelationship. So there are certain things making housing unaffordable in New York City that I won't be able to address at the federal level, but seem very obvious at the city level. For example, the rent stabilized apartments, if landlords want to rehabilitate them, give them a remodel, they can't in any way change that rent rate. And on its face, that may sound great, but give it a couple decades, we want new buildings that have energy efficiency and are safe and don't have asbestos and lead and all this stuff. So it needs to kind of be able to evolve. And so a lot of people, because of that tax code with all its little loopholes, they're leaving these apartments empty because it is
their warehouse. I'm on the east side. You should see what it looks like here. We've got like giant empty spaces where all the low-rise, the 5-story buildings, I used to walk past. I got out of a taxi one night, a little drunk. I didn't even recognize my neighborhood. I thought he had left me off on the wrong corner. And I was like, oh my God, this is where I live. But now we're getting into, in the city, right? Developers and being paid off. And I know a lot about landmarks in New York. I've lived in enough landmark places. I've had landmark people on my other show. There's something fishy going on with landmarks in New York, because I'm telling you, they are starting to threaten and many times find a loophole, your word loophole, to get rid of a landmark building. It's not sacred anymore. What do we do about that?
Oh, well, I know at the federal level, one way I want to combine what the city is doing with the federal level is doing is around Section 9 housing. You mentioned your friends are in similar facilities. We need to have every dollar that the city invests, the federal government inherently has to match it so that local politics and activism can drive federal funding. Because we all know that Washington's kind of like this far off place that no one really lives in, right, and they get out of touch. Whereas we can all find the mayor if we want to and tell them what we think. So having the federal government reflect what's happening at the local level is kind of a model I'm going towards around housing. And I definitely want more rent to own options, because everyone's always talking about tenants and landlords. We need people civically invested and financially sound in the city, rather than always worrying about the rent getting hiked and hiked and hiked. It won't be hiked if it's your property. You're going to be stuck with whatever the mortgage is, or seller financing, figuring out ways we can incentivize people who own properties to sell directly to a buyer without using the bank, cutting down on interest and fees, and making home ownership more affordable. So I want to think a little outside the box of how we can get more New Yorkers owning in New York.
So to my knowledge, and you probably have this knowledge too, there were city programs that in neighborhoods that they wanted to reinvest in, bring back, right? I'll talk about the South Bronx. I'm originally from the Bronx, but the South Bronx, they made it possible for people to buy their wherever they were living, whether it was a 2-family house or an apartment. And by making it possible, of course, the ability to buy, it was very, very low. And I came to New York in the late 70s, and that was going on full steam ahead, Laura. You could do that, and it enabled a lot of working families to your point, where they didn't have a landlord breathing down their neck, right? They had the ability to buy because there were all these programs, and I forget what they were, but now it just doesn't seem, there are some programs out there, but it doesn't seem to me like they're out there in the amount that they should be. Most of, and you can walk around New York and see the buildings going up. These are, they're starting at $3 million. They come with a garage, so you can, put so even we have congestion pricing, so that middle class and working class people, it's pricey now for them to drive their car into the city. But anybody who's rich will be able to have their car in the city and drive it around. I don't know. I'm just like laying it all out because you're in politics, and this is all the I think about all the time. What do we do?
Yeah, well, let's just recognize that politicians are the place we go with all these problems, right? Like I've volunteered to hear all of this and actually sit down and create solutions.
Yeah.
So starting with your first point of like community revitalization, that needs to be community led, right? Too often we're gentrifying, we're actually pushing out the locals, we're trying to make it less affordable, change the dynamics of a neighborhood, which is often code word for class and race discrimination. So, and that's rampant on the Upper West Side. We all know the co-ops deny people's applications for a variety of unlawful reasons, and that's a huge issue here. So I kind of want us to move forward and be thinking about how can we make community at the center of government. And that's what I think Mamdani has done so well, even now with the challenge of the deficit. Like he's watching his leadership and seeing him say, we're making tough decisions, but you're going to be at the table. You're going to see the budget. You're going to know everything that's happening. And I think that invitation for community engagement is really essential for the next wave of politics. And that's why you want a non-establishment candidate like me, because establishment candidates don't do that. They already have their key donors who they need every year to get reelected, and they already have those favorites, and maybe it's a developer, maybe it's not, but there's a lot of developer money in the campaign. I'm proud I've never taken a penny from anyone who's a developer that I'm aware of, at least, and I don't plan to, because I want to put affordability in people's hands. I want the community that I live in to be socioeconomically and racially diverse. We don't want the same cookie cutter people. And that's, I think, why Trump actually had 1 out of 3 votes in New York City. It's becoming a luxury product that people can't afford. And it really needs to stay diverse for the sake of our democracy.
Oh my God. I absolutely agree. And this city, thank God, it is somewhat diverse. When I came here after I graduated from college, it was extremely diverse. We've watched that diversity shrink. I personally feel there has to be some kind of game plan to have all kinds of people, as we always did in New York. The thing about bringing ICE in all over the country, there are so many people, even in New York, and this, they've been working for the last 25 years. They've raised their kids here. They came here illegally, but they pay into New York. They have every single right to stay. And how this got so twisted into, well, I know how he twisted it. He called them all criminals. And the same people that thought he was going to help them said, oh, they must be criminals, because he said that they were. That's one of the things we really need to turn around. I mean, if you look in New York, right, all of our bike delivery boys, those guys are out there on their bikes with those, they look like boxing gloves. I was trying to explain this to friends of mine that don't live in New York. Their hands are cold, so they've learned how to drive these bikes without having freezing hands on freezing cold days. I don't know if you looked after the blizzard, but Mamdani, and I'm going to give a shout out. He had not only the streets clean, and I really don't want to hear from people about the mounds of frozen snow on the sidewalk. I'm sorry, you could only do so much. It froze. Those streets were clean, and more than that, Laura, the bike lanes were clean. The bike lanes were clean for these delivery guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you brought up e-bikes. That's like New Yorkers' favorite topics, right? There's a huge public safety issue, but we also know that this is an industry that's bringing in people to our communities. And I think every single New Yorker is united on respecting hustle. People who want to make it here in America. I want that America to exist into the future. So I think it's not that hard to pass pathways to citizenship, whether it is contributing by taxes, going through a legal process, whatever it is, serving in the military. I want pathways because, yes, we are a community. It doesn't matter what lawful or unlawful status you have in this country. What matters is you're contributing to the community and society. So it is really horrifying. And I just want to, if it's not clear to listeners, it's not just racism, right, that is driving ICE detention and this crackdown. It is an effort to practice the extension of executive power and to push the boundaries so that the next wave, which we've already seen many, many, many hints about, is political enemies. Trump just tried to get, I think it was 5 or 6 sitting senators indicted for treason. Right. And so he's practicing it. There's a design here. It's not just racist. It is how far can the executive go, because then they'll silence the dissidents. So love the First Amendment, practice it every day, every single one of you. Get loud, get proud, get that pride flag back up with the community.
Exactly.
Like, do not stop, because that is the boundary. That is how we hold our democracy as a people, not just by having leaders in Congress.
Right. I wholeheartedly on that. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, which I'm not clear about, can you define where you stand on crypto? I don't totally understand crypto, never have. I stay away from it. If I don't understand it, I'm not going to deal with it. Tell me your feelings about crypto. And if you can speak in baby talk terms, that really would help me and a lot of people I know.
That's all I can speak in. I am not like a crypto finance bro by any stretch of the imagination. So crypto happens to be this unique angle that my campaign has taken up. So like you, when I first heard of crypto like 15 years ago, all the men in my family were making money off it. All the women in the family were like, isn't this a Ponzi scheme? Like, what's going on? So that's the reputation it started with, but it's been around for 15 years. And the New York Stock Exchange now is a 24/7 trading desk. Bitcoin is valued tens of thousands of dollars. It is part of our society. And there are concerns, right, about how it is and is not regulated. And that's the problem that I am taking up. So I want consumer protection, because people think of crypto as like, oh, this is like a rich person thing. The actual concept of crypto is to democratize money. So don't rely on banks. Rely on each other in the community. So they make tokens and they create kind of standards for those tokens. And the value is from people's buy-in. It's the choice of the community to value it. And that's where people get uncomfortable with, is this a good investment or not? You know, you do you. You don't have to be into crypto, but what you do want is Eric Adams and Donald Trump not to profit off of meme coins, because the market manipulations they're able to do within crypto are 100% illegal in the stock market.
Right.
But Congress has left the door open for 15 years for bad actors to manipulate these markets. So people who are looking to innovate, who do want decentralized monetary systems, are being scammed. So my stance is I'm going to stop the scams. I'm going to have consumer protections and make sure we know the good actors from the bad actors in crypto, because it's here to stay whether you're into it or not.
Oh my God. Well, I'm hoping you put your guidelines out there, because I guess because for me, it's not a tangible thing. I'm like, I see things tangible, you know. AI, where do you stand on AI now?
Yes, well, I have a whole pillar. We've talked about accountability, affordability, advancement is the last pillar, and that is hitting on technology. And I have so much to say. AI is like the topic du jour, but I want to back up and start just talking about big tech. So right now, big tech is immune from liability for anything that goes out on their platforms. A lot of people say, oh, that's good, it's free speech. One, it's not free speech because it's a private company and they can kick off and have on whoever they want. I mean, look at Twitter. We know which way that's leaning politically and how censorship is going there. So it's not free speech. It's about just what we expect newspapers to do. If you're going to be a source of information, which most people get their information from online these days, whether that's a credible source or not, we have to make sure that they have standards for what is and is not published and can't promote false information. So I want to make big tech liable by repealing Section 230, or at least amending it so that we have a lot more leeway to hold them accountable. And AI kind of builds into that, because big tech has an arrogance. They think they're untouchable. And with AI, as we have new innovators and developments, we don't want to stifle innovation. We want to be the leaders in the world, because some other country is going to do it if we're not, and we're the leaders in that right now. So what we need to do is make sure there's sufficient insurance liability coverage for those technology companies before they put a product into the world. I want to do something kind of similar to, if anyone was in college and did some of the psychology studies, there's an IRB process. You have to put forward ethical standards and guardrails and protections with the AI as a proposal to the government to get approval to run it. And even then, I want to do what's called regulatory sandboxes. I want sample populations compensated for their time to be able to use the technology, because it does hallucinate. It does terrifying things. It manipulates children into suicide. We need to have safe ways that we can test and find the security, right? That's what we do with all technologies. What is safe to put in the population? We can do the same thing in this country.
Well, I think, across the boards, Laura, you are asking for accountability. You're asking for guidelines. You're saying, hey, this stuff does exist, but it just can't float freely out there where people can manipulate it for their own personal gain. Am I correct?
That's 100% on the money. That's the civil rights, victims' rights attorney championing in the background. I'm for the people and holding institutions accountable, because we can have innovation and safety. It's not one or the other.
Right. Exactly. So I don't know where the time went, but it absolutely flew, as I knew it with you would do with you. Sum it all up in like a couple of sentences before we say goodnight. Tell everybody what you want them to remember from our discussion.
Oh, no pressure. Well, I want to speak to our community, because when I think about people living loud and proud and standing for what they believe in, I think of the LGBTQ and the queer community. I am so honored to be a member of it and to have been embraced in New York City as such a member. And I want us to remember that we are the innovators and the leaders. So when we see all these attacks, when we are used as the scapegoats, when the hate is coming from the right, just realize that the more we shine and the more that we actually embody joy and protest and resilience, the more we show the world really how it's done. And I do believe in a new day. So I hope that I give people who are hearing me hope that there will be not just accountability, but a day when we can all feel like it's normal again and forget that this nightmare ever happened.
I love it. Laura is going to help us all feel normal again. I wish you incredible luck on the campaign trail. You got my vote. I think you're terrific. And I know people that are listening, they're on your side too. Thank you so much, Laura. I always like to end with photographs. So if you look into my little camera, thank you so much really for tonight. Just chock full of information. This will exist, of course, on my YouTube channel. I'll have the link. I'll send it to you. You have so much incredible stuff to say. And yes, you, Laura Dunn, can give people hope. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone who tuned in tonight. Good night.
Thank you.